Hi everyone. So today we're going to be looking at that vocabulary that we learned yesterday and the different types of angles that we talked about and how we can use them to determine the measure of certain angles. So let's recall what we learned. So at the bottom of your notes you have a few reminders. One of them is that complementary angles always add up to 90 degrees. So when we set up an equation, it's going to be something plus something else, sum, right? Sum means adding two things together, and they have to equal 90 degrees. Same thing for supplementary angles. Two angles or more really could add up to 180 degrees. And then vertical angles, my favorite, I don't know why, but they are congruent. So let's remember the word congruent means equal. So an angle being equal to another angle. And a linear pair is new to us. A linear pair is like when you have a line, linear means line, right? And it's cut in half. Remember, a line is really just a straight angle, and we know straight angles are 180 degrees. So if you cut it into two angles, they still equal 180 degrees. So a linear pair are two angles that share the same line, and they are supplementary, which means they also add up to 180 degrees. So use these kind of templates to create your equations. So I would definitely write all of this down so that you can refer back to this little reminders corner as you're going through your practice. Okay? So let's look at our first example and let's look at what kind of angles these are. So really, we should get a big heads up right here that this is a right angle. Right angles have that little square in the corner meaning 90 degrees. So these are what are called complementary angles. So write that in the blanks, complementary angles, and we said they add up to 90 degrees. So an angle plus another angle has to equal 90. So what do we put there? These two angles, 3x plus 7 is one of the angles. It represents that first angle. And the second angle is represented by 6x plus 2. And now we have to remember all those wonderful things we learned in Unit 1 for solving for x. So we're going to draw a line where the equal sign is. If they're on the same side, you can combine them. For instance, I can combine 3x and 6x together, and those would give me 9x. I can also combine the constants, 7 and 2. We cannot combine them with 90 because 90 is on the right side. We're only combining things that are on the same side. So 7 plus 2 is 9, and the other side just stays 9. Now remember our goal is to get this x alone. So to do that, let's start with adding and subtracting. To get rid of a plus 9, we do the opposite and minus 9. And if you do it on the left, you must do it on the right. So 9 minus 9 is 0. So we've got 9x on the left and 81 on the right. And the very last step to get rid of the number in front of our x is divide, because 9x really means 9 times x. And the opposite of times is division. So we are dividing both sides by 9, and x actually ends up being 9, because 81 divided by 9 is 9. So we have filled out this portion, x. But a lot of times, you don't just get asked for x. Read the directions. It says solve for x and find the measure of both angles. So let's find the measure of each angle. Currently, we know this tiny angle here is 3x plus 7. And the other angle is 6x plus 2. I don't know what that is. It should be one number, one angle measure. But we do know x now. We solved for it, so that's going to help us. So I'm going to do that first angle first. The first angle is 3x plus 7. So I'm going to replace the x with, oops, sorry, I miswrote that. 3x plus 7. And instead of x, we put parentheses, and we're going to plug in 9, because we know that x is 9 now. And 3 times 9 is 27, plus 7 is 34 degrees. That's one of the angles. Now I'm going to do the other one, which is 6x plus 2. Once again, replacing x with 9, because we know that x is 9. 6 times 9 is 54, plus 2 is 56. So those are the measures of those two angles. The smaller one is 34 degrees, and the larger one is 56 degrees. please make sure to put your degree symbols on there, guys, okay? It's pretty important. Because otherwise, we don't know that it's the measure of an angle. Okay, the x is not the measure of an angle, it's just a value. We found out that the value of x is 9, but we plugged it in to actually find out what the measures of each angle is in degrees. So now let's go ahead and look at the second one. I'm going to help you set up the equation, and then I'm going to have you pause the video and try and solve it yourself. So this one, notice that the two angles together form a line, which means this is called a linear pair. So let's write that down, linear pair. And just like supplementary angles, since they add up to a line is 180 degrees. So let's set up our equation. One angle plus one angle has to equal 180 because a whole line is 180 degrees. The first angle is 7y minus 17, and the second angle is 3y plus 8. So I want you to take a moment and try and solve for y. Pause the video. Okay, so check your work to see how you did. Hopefully you added the y's together to get 10y and added the constants together to get -9. And then added 9 to both sides and then divided both sides by 10, and we did get a decimal. That's okay. In geometry, you'll find next year you'll get a lot more decimals than you did this year in Algebra 1. Now, it asked for a specific angle. It used it by name, just like we have names. So angles have names. We're looking for angle ABD. So ABD. Okay, so that means it wants this angle right here. Okay, sorry about that. Angle ABD. So I need to find out what 7y minus 17 is. 7y minus 17. But we know what y is now, so I'm replacing y with 18.9. So when we calculate this, this is 7 times 18.9 minus 17 to get our whole angle, which is 115 degrees, 115.3 degrees. I'm going to write it down here as well, 115.3 degrees. Of course, you could also find the other acute angle as well and then add them. Make sure they add up to 180 degrees. That's a really good way to check your answer. Alrighty. So make sure you're always asked, when you do problems like this, guys, really read which angle it's asking for. You don't want to accidentally give them angle CBD instead of ABD. Okay. So let's look at the last example, example 3. These two angles are across from each other, and those are called vertical angles. And if you look at our reminders on the right side, you can see that it tells us vertical angles are congruent or equal. So our equation then is we're going to have two things that are equal to each other. And that's these two angles, this one and this one, because they're across from each other. So we've got on one side 2x plus 40, and on the other side of the equal sign 5x plus 16. Now this one's a little bit different than the previous problems because a lot of the terms are not on the same side, like the 2x and the 5x. I can't add them together to get 7x because they're on opposite sides, right? The 2x is on the left and the 5x is on the right. I can't combine them, but I can eliminate one by subtracting one of them from both sides. It does not matter which one. I usually go with the smaller one, because that means my answers will come out positive. 5 minus 2 is a positive 3x, for instance. The positive 16 is still there. The 40 on the left is still there, but 2x minus 2x is 0. And that was important because our goal was to have just one x. Now we only have one x there, this one right here, and our goal is to get that x alone. So let's start by getting rid of the plus 16 by minusing it. 40 minus 16 is 24, and the last step is to divide by 3. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. We have found out that x is 8. Wonderful. Now it also asks us to find the measure of angle QRS. So let's look at that angle QRS. Which one is that? Okay, angle QRS is this angle right here. But remember, the two angles should be equal, right? We said that earlier. So I think it's a good idea, especially in these problems, to make sure they're equal. So 2x plus 40 is one of the angles. I'm going to replace the x with 8. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 40 is 56 degrees. Okay, so now I'm going to check the other one. I just did this one right here. Now I'm going to check the other one, 5x plus 16, and do the same thing and make sure they come out equal. The x is still 8. We had found out that x was 8. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 16 is indeed 56. Yay! Both angles, doesn't matter which one you do, they should both be the same because vertical angles are congruent or they have the same measure, which in this case, they are both 56 degrees. So look through these examples again, see if you have any questions, ask your teacher, and remember you do have a Delta Math assignment that is due by the end of the week. Okay, so please make sure it is completed by then. Have a great day, guys. Bye.